had fundraising as a topic, including typical mistakes startups make, our next topic is also not only an exciting one, but currently a very important trend that is hard to ignore. It's about blockchain. And the next session is going to be trying to focus on the question if you or if any company is interested in the blockchain environment as a whole. What are the typical challenges? It will be a session focused on the product point of view and showcase some real-world challenges when building on blockchain based from product side and certain guidelines how to tackle them. Our next speaker is Dennis van der Wecht. He is a Dutch guy living in Poland currently and responsible for multiple blockchain projects, working together with some of his clients. He works for 10 Clouds, which is a software house that is focused on the business perspective of blockchain, and they help their clients to, in very different industries, to get their blockchain projects off the ground from a product perspective. So he'll be there and share his experience. So please welcome with me on stage, Dennis.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi. Thanks for being here, Pioneers. Thanks for being at my talk, Building on Blockchain. I was expecting the Beastie Boys with Sabotage, but I think they found it a little bit too hard. I'm here today to talk a little bit about the following, because my goal is here for two reasons. One is for everyone who might have a product already and heard about blockchain to see what is it and how can I adapt it, for example, to the product that I already have existing. And secondly, for everybody already did an ICO or seed funding and is looking at the next steps in actually creating their product and what challenges you might face. Why am I telling you this? I work at a software house, 10 Clouds, Dutch in Poland. And what we had 1.5 years ago is we started with a first blockchain-related project. It was very interesting, very cool. We learned a lot as a software house. And what we came across is that during that 1.5 years, the hype became more and more and more and more. We got more and more contacts daily in with new challenges from all kinds of industries. And we found it interesting to share what are some of these main challenges that we face in there. I'm not going to tell you, so what is blockchain? Because I hope that some of you or most of you have heard about it before and have some kind of general interest. But what is interesting is why blockchain? Of course, one of them is the amazing amount of money circulating in that industry, but there are also other factors attached to it. One of them, of course, is no central authority. Think about skipping a bank or skipping a Google AdWords or any third party who might add an additional fee to whatever you're doing. Speed of transactions. If I would like to send some money, some euros to some Swiss exchange or a Swiss a client or a contact of mine, it takes sometimes days in order for it to reach it actually. Third one is security and immutability in blockchain. Fourth of them, the transparency. I can exactly see what is happening to all of the transactions that are happening and what the roots are of it. And the cost reduction. So when you remove actually this third party, for example, the fees that you're also there for skipping. So what kind of struggles did we see in these kind of startups or entrepreneurs or sometimes even enterprises when starting in the blockchain? One of them is general, very general, basic. I have a team of developers. What do I change in order to get in that environment? Secondly is what kind of blockchain actually am I going to use? Where should I look for? What are the factors I take into account? The other three are more specific cases that we just saw a lot in one of our clients, and you can adapt it to most of your industries out there. One of them is, for example, how do I tokenize new asset classes? We'll talk about that later. Second one could be, how do I remove actually this third party that I just talked about? And the third one could be, so how do I process data between multiple organizations? And I'll tell a little bit more about why it's interesting, why it's adapted to multiple industries, and what the challenges are that we face. First off, let's talk about the basics. Development in blockchain. Most of you are a startup here, you have your internal team, where you have some external developers that you're working with together. How does that actually change if I want to develop on a blockchain? You have your normal front-end, back-end team, you have your tester, you have your DevOps whatsoever, project manager. What is different there? First off is your smart contract developer, because you want to interact with the blockchain. You want to create certain contracts that have certain characteristics of your transactions that relate to the use case that you have. Secondly is a DApp, or a decentralized app developer, who wants to connect this product with the smart contract and the blockchain that is starting out. And this can be both on the front and the back end side. Third is most important, and I think, at least what I hear, one of the most annoying things to find is actually a blockchain architect. Someone who knows the business case around it, someone who knows the architecture and can find together with you the best use cases of making it work. If you then look at selecting the right blockchain, what we found across with all these contexts that we talked about, these different companies, is that there are a couple of factors that you take into account mostly. One of them is the scalability, which is something that's still being developed and is not in a maturity yet. But it is a very important thing to look at if you want to look at, like, what if my transactions are becoming larger and larger and larger, and you need more and more transactions in a minimal time. Secondly is the support of the blockchain community. What if you start in you select a certain blockchain, the community is high, and in 2 years' time it's gone. There is no community. You might have a cool product there, but it's not evolving anymore. You're stuck. And if you then put all the money in there, and you can't do actually anything with it. Third of them is the fit with your tech stack. For example, if you already have a product and you use a certain tech stack attached to it, what if the blockchain doesn't have an SDK to attach to that specific language? Check that out. It's good to know before actually selecting it. Fourth of all, and it's one of the most important ones as well, and related to the blockchain architect, is actually what use case will drive transactions. So why am I starting there? What am I actually trying to achieve? Is it just for the hype of it, or do I think I really have a case that needs to be on blockchain? Fifth of it is private or public blockchain. Is it for me important that only certain organizations or nodes are related within this blockchain and only they approve whatever is happening? Or is it public and it's like, for example, money transactions where everyone should be able to accept it? Now let's take a specific case. How do I tokenize new asset classes? I'm not sure if anyone last week has been in New York, where the first crypto marketplace was. There was a company called Codex. What they did is they sold CryptoKitties for $140,000 US. And it's, for me, the second most interesting use case after doing the ICOs, where you could actually tokenize your product or your company. And now we're doing that with tangible items, or, for example, digital artwork. It's very interesting because the difference is between having, for example, a very closed marketplace where you transfer art, where you have only 10 or 20 people sitting there with the right sum of money. You make it available to the large audience, and everybody can invest a certain percentage in that product, which is amazingly interesting because there's so much money in blockchain that everybody literally could invest money and wants to invest it because they want to put it in assets. What if your crypto goes down suddenly, you have nothing left? So it's interesting because you have it for multiple industries. You can do it for luxury cars. You can do it for e-commerce. You can do it for commodities like gold, which is currently being developed, which will be very interesting, by the way. But what I'm mostly talking about currently is art. The challenges you then face is like, okay, how do I actually tokenize those assets? Then the next one would be like, okay, how would I store, for example, a very unique asset? And what kind of choice do I use for blockchain? To make it very simple, this is not the hardest use case, because you could, for example, pretty easily use Ethereum to make that happen. You just have to make sure that the smart contract is exactly stating what you would like to happen in a transaction. And there is something new developing, if you want to look into it. It's a non-fungible token, which actually means that there are a lot of metadata about new specific artwork stored, which makes it a lot more possible to see exactly whose artwork it is and that you're the only one having it. More important here, please be careful, is the legal aspect. That's not what I'm here for, but it is something that we come across with all of our clients that start with the product development before actually knowing where to dive into. Second one, how do I remove these third parties and optimize my market? Who is here on Airbnb? Wow, not a lot of people use Airbnb here. Airbnb, for me, is something that I use a lot. And every time I do book a night, for example, I went to Georgia 2 weeks ago, €10 for a living in a room, and my cost, an additional fee, were 10 or 15% even on that. For example, also if I buy advertisements and Google AdWords charge more than 30%, these are for me fees that sometimes are not needed. And a company came towards us exactly with that statement saying, hey, we would like to remove Google AdWords and want to be a peer-to-peer platform between publisher and advertiser. So we said, sure, let's help them out. And again, you can adapt it to any of these industries. These are just a sample of it, but what about removing a bank? What about moving in terms of insurance, the insurance company, and have a direct way of doing this? What is interesting is indeed the challenges here again, like how do I remove that third party? How do I make it secure at the same time? How do I have some kind of anonymity? Not everybody needs to know what kind of websites I want to publish my advertisements. And these kind of challenges is what we faced. So that relates us also to why blockchain. First off, what they also face was transaction speed, because you need to be able to have an advertisement done, let's say in milliseconds, their transaction is happening, and currently that's not really possible. So it's really cool to see that currently they're developing something called enterprise service chain to see how to make it faster, how to have less transaction cost, and be able to actually make it work in the way they want to work. We created a platform with them, a peer-to-peer platform. And the cool thing is, through the smart contract, we say, like, OK, well, we only want to pay if there's actually an impression or a click on our website, not earlier, not during, but after. So all these kind of things are possible as well. So this is a second use case, which is very interesting because you can put it on several different industries. The third one I want to talk about is how do I optimize the data exchange between organizations. In Poland, there's a rule, if you're a bank, either to send official statements by paper, which is at a certain moment pretty expensive, or by email and approved by multiple institutions, which is kind of time-consuming. So there was a case that came with us, which was in terms of law enforcement, very similar, is I have a criminal record, I need to share it with Interpol, with other organizations, and it took them, for example, 5 or 6 days to have it approved by all these institutions before they could actually get the right data and hence to help, support, and whatever it was necessary. You can also do it in healthcare, which is becoming more and more important, about security and privacy of all the data and about your e-health reports. Or logistics, for example, as well. So here across, we also come challenges about how do I share my data in this way? How do I make it trustworthy so that no one can tamper with that data? And how do I actually connect all these institutions together? Well, first answer that we came up with, we worked with them upon is, of course, to go for a private blockchain where you can select which organizations should approve the whole process. The second part was also regarding the data. What we did is, with them together, is what we took a look at is how to store those documents on like a decentralized database, something as like BitTorrent, for example. Create a hash on it so that everybody can still see exactly what is happening with that documentation. Have that hash reference. You could even send it by email, for example, as a bank in Poland to the client, so he can see exactly the document when it's necessary. And no single organization can tamper with the data because it's on the blockchain. Which again results back to the security I would talk about why you would like to use blockchain. Now these are all interesting cases, or 3 interesting cases that can be adaptable to each industry. Why am I telling you this? Is mostly because I think the most important thing is before you start is to think about, okay, I have a product, now what? And I hope that with this presentation I could give you a little bit of an insight in like which maneuvers I can take to get there, what are still challenges that could be faced, but it's also very easy to overcome them, and maybe some inspiration on use cases. If you want to talk about it more, feel free to send me a message or to phone me, or come to Warsaw for a cup of coffee. And thanks a lot for being here at this event. Enjoy the rest. Thank you so much.